There's a lot going on in college sports. West Virginia introducing an actual for-profit entity to run their athletic department. You have athletes now making money through PayPal. What? PayPal and college athletics? What's going on? We're going to talk about that and more in this episode of Couz's Corner. I'm joined by a very special guest. Many of you may already know his name is Mr. Carson Fox. Carson, what's up, man?
Hey, Couz, thanks for having me on this show. It was really guys like yourself, the raspy voice kids, Mike Ostie, that really inspired me a few years ago to get started into this and start getting these crazy thoughts about West Virginia sports out of my head. So really appreciate being on this show and going to look forward to a lot of fun.
Absolutely. Just real quick before we dive into the content, man, let everybody know out there where they can find you and your work.
Sure. So if you're a YouTube subscriber out there, Fox on West Virginia Mountaineer Sports, or you can follow me on Twitter, X at Carson_Fox27.
Awesome. All right, man, let's go ahead and dive into the fun stuff, right? Or maybe not so fun. I don't know. But it's stuff we got to talk about. Big 12 yesterday. It came out that the Big 12 inked a deal with PayPal. Going to bring each school in about an extra $1 million a year in revenue. Apparently somehow tied to NIL, where players are now going to basically all their NIL deals will be done through PayPal. They will get their money through PayPal. PayPal is going to sponsor some events with with their Venmo arm and all kinds of crazy stuff. So what were your thoughts on that? Do you think that's good, bad? What's your thoughts?
So this is the forward-thinking approach that all of the commissioners and the presidents in the Big 12 hired a commissioner like Brett Yormark for. First, they wanted to get the TV media rights deal done, which they did. The destabilization, while good or bad for college sports at large, but of the Pac-12 conference, bringing in the 4 from the group of 5 a few years ago in Cincinnati, Houston, UCF, and BYU. Now it's like, okay, realignment and everything with TV deals are pretty much settled up until they can start to renegotiate in 2030, 2031, and who knows what the world is going to look like right there. So these outside business deals, things like this, trying to play, or, the Big 12 NFL draft combine just for those conference players. He's really he's an out of the box thinker, creative. And I like that he can make these kinds of business deals that are going to put more money in the pockets of athletes at the end of the day. So it makes if the conference can be more attractive with more talent to compete against the SEC and the Big Ten, then this is a great move.
Yeah. And when I first heard about it, I'll be honest, I was thinking, it's only $1 million, and $1 million in that world of college athletics is nothing right now. But
every dollar counts.
Exactly. $1 million is $1 million more than they had yesterday. And right now in this world, it's all about getting it where you can get it. If you can get $1 million here and $2 million over here and $4 million over here, it's going to add up to that $20.5 million that you have to pay out to these athletes, right, at some point. So again, it's a great opportunity for this conference and the teams in it to make more money. It's like you said, it's an outside the box idea. Now the Big 12, to be clear, is not the only conference doing it. Big 10 is also doing a deal with PayPal. It's also my understanding, Carson, based on what I heard listening, I think it was 365 Sports, shout out to them, that I think there's going to be some sponsorships involved. Like PayPal will be sponsoring the Big 12, Big 10 basketball event. Or challenge, whatever it's called. They're going to be sponsoring some Big 12 championship events. And heck, they even almost had the naming rights to the Big 12. That's actually how the conversation got started. So what are your thoughts on, seeing maybe Venmo or PayPal plastered all over Big 12 events?
Well, you have to throw a corporate sponsorship on just about everything these days, don't you?
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
If you follow on social media, how many Mountaineer fans right now are hoping for Sheets to be one of these, naming rights members to either Mountaineer Field or the WVU Coliseum, something like that. So I get it. It sometimes becomes a little bit of a mouthful. And then, having been at now Acrisure Stadium, which was previously Heinz Field when the name change happened at the Backyard Brawl in 2022, it's like it's forever be known as Heinz Field. My local movie theater changed names with a new sponsor, over 10 years ago, and we still know it from that name of 20 years ago. But hey, if they're willing to spend that money, and in regards to bringing it back to West Virginia outside of the Big 12, that was something I talked about in a video just a couple of months ago, that West Virginia has to get creative with these opportunities, and Milan Puskar Stadium has been named so for over 20 years now. And when Penn State signing a deal to, change the name of Beaver Stadium or the field there and getting paid upwards of, 3-4 million a year, like that. Again, it's those little incremental things that you can control and get creative about as an athletic department in this new world. And that's unfortunately, good or bad, the way you have to do business in nowadays. It's not necessarily about the compliance and the administration. You have to find leaders who are business people.
Absolutely. And, a lot of fans, and Ren Becker has alluded to this in interviews, a lot of fans are not going to like some of the things they have to do. We have fans that are traditionalists. They don't like names being on stuff. They're not going to like, corporate names on the stadiums and on the courts and the fields. And heck, in the future, we may even see them on jerseys at some point down the road. Right.
Right.
But we just don't have a choice, man. Like you mentioned, I mean, if you want to compete, because you know what else fans like, and Ren mentioned this. He said, you know what else they like? Winning. So if you want to win, you got to make money. Exactly. And this deal, look, this $1 million deal, $1 million per team deal, because the Big 12 is going to make some money off of it too, not just the teams. But this deal, yes, it's not going to help them catch up to the SEC and Big 10, man. But I think right now it's a matter of almost survival, right? I mean, because if you can't hit that 20.5 million number, which by the way is going to increase every year by like 3 to 4%, if you can't hit that profit share number, you're not even going to come close to competing. So
exactly,
it ain't really even anymore. It's not even about trying to catch them. It's about just trying to keep the status quo and compete on a week in, week out basis.
Well, that's why if we were going to lead off this show in this direction, what I was really prepared to say is, I am so thankful that West Virginia has strategic, forward-thinking leadership and I'll be very interested to see what are some of the first moves, strategic plan of new president Michael Benson. But with Ren Becker at the helm, he's coming up with everything out there to possibly do. I mean, I filled out the survey last fall about the expanded luxury box accommodations, potentially everything with Country Roads Lager, Swill Dog Whiskey. He's talked about opening up a potential business district or having that work in tandem for expanded NIL opportunities, the Goat Bar down in Morgantown. So every lever that you can pull, Ren Becker is doing so. And, there are some moves that West Virginia's had to make, the buyout to Neil Brown's contract, the changing of the guard of basketball over the course. I know West Virginia kind of made money there in terms of Darian DeVries going to Indiana, but it's just like it costs money to keep up with the Joneses in the world. So the decision to bring Country Roads Trust into the Mountaineer Athletic Club, rebranding it now as Golden Blue Enterprises to drive those 501c3 tax deductible donations that previously weren't under Country Roads Trust, that you're just paying out of the goodness of your heart and what you can afford in today's economy. That is going to help West Virginia so much, I feel like, to stay within this $20.5 million, which isn't going to help the big boys in the SEC and the Big Ten that are swimming in ESPN and Fox Sports money. And it's not also going to help those programs with, I'll say it, some of these rogue donors who want to play owner. Take Cody Campbell down there at Texas Tech, or Barstool's Dave Portnoy at Michigan, or Phil Knight having his hand so much in Oregon. It's just like, we're on a very slippery slope, I feel like, in college athletics. And for a time, these house settlement guidelines are going to give us a little bit of stability. There will be challenges in court. Title IX, uncapped, regulating uncapped NIL, so on and so forth. And those will get caught up in the courts, like we're already kind of seeing right now with Wisconsin and Miami and the player who portaled. But for at least a little bit, maybe in time, right when the conference realignment potentially happens with the new TV deals in 2030 to 31, that's what we're going to, and I think West Virginia will be one of the benefactoring programs from that.
Yeah. And I think Ren Becker, I think getting rid of Shane, no disrespect to Shane Lyons, I just don't think he was the type of AD to lead West Virginia into the next era. He was still the old school type AD, right? Where he was focused on hiring coaches, and fundraising was a piece of it, but he was not willing to go down. He was not willing to step into any gray area where it might even be questioned as a violation, right, of rules, because he was a compliance guy. That's how he came up in the business, in the industry. Ren Becker came up doing what? Raising money. That's where he got, I guess you could say, his name to fame, so to speak, or what made him such a, that in his success hiring coaches, basketball coaches. But I just think he's the right guy. My biggest concern, obviously, is that he doesn't stay with West Virginia for a long time. But we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. But you mentioned Golden Blue Enterprises. I mean, if you think about it, you mentioned being able to make donations, tax deductible. I think that's huge, bigger than probably people are talking about, because how many people was not willing to make that donation because they couldn't write it off on their taxes, right? So hopefully that'll create an opportunity to get higher number of donations, which obviously could lead to a higher amount as well in the end. But what it also enables them to do, and Ren mentioned this, it creates a business basically inside the athletic department. They won't have to deal with university red tape to make decisions now, right? Now, the university will still be overseeing it and they will still have input. Don't get me wrong. But they won't have to deal with university bureaucracy. If he wants to go out and cut a deal, some kind of marketing deal with a corporation, he can do that. If he wants to go out and start that entertainment district, if he wants to bring a WWE event or something, I'm just using that as an example, to Morgantown, because he's a huge wrestling fan, so I'll do that. Whatever. I mean, he's going to have the flexibility probably to do that now under the scope of an actual company, an LLC. They can profit from it. Part of that money can go to the athletes. Part of it can go to helping with facilities, the premium seating, which I want to talk to you about that too. All of these things that he will not have more flexibility to do because of this entity, along with all the other ideas. They're going to try to get, the university's probably going to start chipping in more money for the athletic department, which is huge to me.
Yep.
I didn't realize that West Virginia was that far behind their peer schools in the Big 12, but they were. So,
yep.
And what's cool, you mentioned Michael Benson. I interviewed somebody that covers Coastal Carolina sports, and Michael Benson, thankfully, is a president who sees the importance of sports. He's an ex-college athlete himself. He gets it. So I think so far, at least on paper, it looks like that was a great hire. But I agree with you on everything. What do you speak? Let's go back to the premium seating for a minute.
Okay.
What are your thoughts on the premium seating? Do you like it? Do you hate it? What are your thoughts on it?
So it's something that it seems like Ren Becker, since the day he's got here, has made that his cross to bear. That as nice as Milan Puskar Stadium has come up over the last decade, because it's now getting that Big 12 money. I mean, there was some investment that definitely needed to be made. The expanded concourses, things of that nature. Yes, that is kind of the one thing that you look around and seeing some other facilities on TV nationally. It's like they have those big luxury boxes.
Even UCF has them.
I haven't been
in a
small
stadium.
Yeah, I haven't been in the diversified energy terrace, so I can't really speak to that. But I think it makes a lot of sense there up on the press box side, the Let's Go side, or the Mountaineer side of the Let's Go chant. Yeah. And then just do some creative things with the way that ticketing is distributed. I got on and made a whole series about a year ago about how Oddspedia ranked West Virginia the second most expensive game day experience of any program in the country. And I'm sorry, but just for what West Virginia fans dealt with during the Neil Brown era from wins and losses, that was unacceptable. So, and then also seeing how many students, that's a gripe that goes all on social media all the time. But I was at the Maryland game in 2021, and Maryland's fans completely deck out the one end zone sign. They flash the big M logo, and they're all dressed in white that game. And I was thinking, with the way student turnout has been at some games, I think that makes a perfect space to potentially move the student sections to in the horseshoe on the other side.
I like that idea.
Open up all of those seatings and then do tiered ticketing. So why is West Virginia, I know the third party sites are what they are, but it's like, if you're sitting in the upper quarter of the second level, or, the upper half, why are you paying the same, price as someone who's down 50 rows from you? And those seats there's no one in them. I was at the BYU game in 2023, and it was just like, it just felt like it was 75% full. So I think the premium boxes will solve the issue of adding those to keep up with the Joneses in that regard, to get some of those premium donors to spend big bucks. Well, that will then lessen the ticket price for the general fan like, myself. So I'm always trying to look for a deal.
Absolutely.
So
Who isn't? I mean,
yeah, exactly.
most of us aren't. Most of us can't afford premium seating.
Right.
So
And you're paying what, $40 to park in the green lot, as I do every single day. The gas to go. It's not an inexpensive, Saturday afternoon or evening kind of thing. So to try and make it a little bit more affordable from that regard, supplementing it with all of the sponsorship things that we've already laid out here, I think that it can get to a more, again, stable, or because I have some Pitt fan friends living here just across the border in Pennsylvania, and it just ticks me off when I hear about what they're spending for a whole season ticketing package. I know they play in an NFL stadium that nobody goes to games, but when I hear what they're paying for ticketing prices versus what West Virginia is paying for tickets on an average Saturday against TCU or Baylor, or not a Pitt or Penn State or Virginia Tech, which always sells out, and we can talk about that in terms of the Big 12 too. So it just I wish things would level out just a little bit. And I think they're coming. I really do think they're coming under Ren Becker's leadership.
yeah, I like the idea. Our press box, first off, I mean, I'm not a member of the credentialed media, but our press box is flat out embarrassing when you compare it to other schools. I mean, it is embarrassing. And that's where the press box premium seating, or like you mentioned, are usually tied together, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have that large press box, and underneath the press box on the bottom row, you have all those premium seating. West Virginia's press box isn't even big enough to do that. Now, to put those seats in, you're going to have to take out probably some other seats. But Carson, I just got through recording a video before you and I started talking about the seating at WVU. They're only averaging about 53 to 55,000 fans a game, man.
Yeah, I know.
That's 5 to 7,000 empty seats a week.
As someone,
if they're not going to go, take them out, put premium seats in, and make more money on those seats. Let the big donors who want to pay the money pay the money. I know Ren and probably he's hired consultants and all this to do to run the numbers. Matter of fact, I know they have because he said it in an interview recently. They've already run the numbers. They're leaving millions and millions of dollars on the table every single year by not having those. I don't understand why they didn't do this years ago, to be perfectly honest with you.
Well, I think there was more that needed to be done. I remember, was it the backyard brawl? It was the backyard brawl in 2011, the last one. I was on the west side coming out, and that was just a mud slope. It was a hill, and I'm coming out the stadium with my dad, and we're ragging on all the Pitt fans after we won that game. Mm-hmm. And I remember sliding all the way down that hill, and it was just the expanded concourses were absolutely definitely needed with the access.
I agree.
Like that, and the signage and the new lights that came last year. It's been it's always a facelift. If you're not trying to improve, you're falling behind because you're staying stagnant. And then everything that West Virginia did to the WVU Coliseum years ago, and then of course building the brand new baseball facility, the track and field aquatic center, that's awesome. So what I would say about going back to Michael Benson is I think he will hear Ren Becker out on this decision, because you look around and that's really the number one priority, I feel like, because everything's kind of settled across all of their old sports. You don't need massive improvements beside that one. And having been just through Myrtle Beach a couple of weeks ago, drove by that new indoor practice facility Coastal has twice. It's as big, if not bigger, than Brooks Stadium. It's massive. So if he can do it, he can raise the money, build partnerships with different organizations there in greater Myrtle Beach. I think that he can make some inroads with those partners, tying this full circle to what we've talked about, those 50c3 tax-deductible donations. WVU is the number one largest business in the state of West Virginia. So you have to find money from those outside partners, and your Tudor's Biscuit World and your Toothman Ford and stuff like the United Bank and stuff. Those will help. All of those things will help if they can increase what they're contributing or make deals and stuff like that. That's awesome. But West Virginia doesn't have these Fortune 500 companies that are just willing to drop, or beyond the donors that West Virginia has. I feel like you can only go the well so many times to Ken Kendrick or so many times to Pat McAfee. Will this bring some of the? And I know we wanted to talk about Rich Rod's hiring.
We're good.
So will those other second level donors contribute more because they can write it off their taxes?
Yep. Since 1931, the attorneys at Katz, Cantor, Stone Street, and Buckner have been the voice for victims who have suffered serious injury or death. They have a fierce passion for truth and justice and a sincere compassion for those who have been wronged by others. Whether you have been in a car accident, are fighting with an insurance company, or you or a loved one has suffered serious injury or death due to medical negligence, we will ensure your voice is heard loud and clear. Katz, Cantor, Stone Street, and Buckner will ensure there is justice for all West Virginians because we are your lawyer, your voice. Visit us at yourlawyeryourvoice.com. And I'm going to ask you something too. And I don't think you and I've discussed this off air. Here's what and Ren, he's probably not going to come out and say this in an interview unless he's asked about it. And then he'll probably give a somewhat of a generic answer because he has to. But I'm thinking what he could potentially, and he mentioned, I don't know if you heard it in a Three Guys episode the other day, but he actually mentioned a possible Green Bay Packers type model where fans are actually part owners of the. I don't know why nobody else caught on to that but me. Maybe somebody else did. I just missed it. Maybe you did. I don't know. But I think that's genius. And two, this might open the door for West Virginia to make a deal with a private equity firm as well.
So I'm a little worried about private equity just because
I thought you were. That's why I brought it up.
It sounds like private equity, like is a deal with the devil kind of thing. And from
it doesn't have to be though if you do it the right. It does. It could be private capital or there's other ways you can form it without them having ownership in the department.
So I heard that segment and again, my ears perked to that because I was like, wait a second, I know how that does work with the Green Bay Packers. So if that it's just very wild when you think about it, Couz, in the year of our Lord 2025, that we have professional sports enterprises masquerading under the guise of a university academic system. That's really what it's becoming. And, highest paid statewide employees are usually the football coach or the men's basketball coach. And that's what we're talking about, which makes it fun, but it's just kind of like crazy when you sit back and think about it. So I like that. I don't know much necessarily about private equity. And when I hear about, conference-wide private equity moves within the Big 12, I am not the biggest Big 12 fan and for what it brings to West Virginia. I think it was, fun in the early 20 teens and then just, come around 2018. And this was still when Texas and Oklahoma were in the conference. Mm-hmm. But now we're in West Virginia is an eastern frontier on this westwardly directionally going conference. And I'm going to go to the Arizona State game this upcoming November. And so I'm really excited to check that out. My brother's a ASU grad, so we're going to kind of make it a whole family experience. But why is West Virginia in Morgantown playing in Tempe, Arizona, a conference game when you can't be playing Maryland, Pitt, Virginia Tech, Penn State, that kind of thing? It's just a weird world in which we live in right now with this conference structure that just doesn't make sense from a geographic standpoint.
It doesn't make sense geographically. And I don't necessarily disagree with you, but here's the problem. The TV networks are driving the bus now.
Correct.
And they want they don't necessarily want huge conferences, but they like having the multiple time zones because they can get games on multiple windows.
Yep.
They like that stuff. And I think that's why these conferences went to that model. I don't love it either. I've kind of grown fond of the Big 12 over time because I've gotten to know some of the fans of other teams. And I think culturally, West Virginia is a great fit in the Big 12. A lot of similarities, a lot of other land grant schools.
Yeah.
A lot of similar resources, things like that I think makes West Virginia. But geographically, you're right. It's tough. But I just, unfortunately, the ACC wouldn't let us in multiple times. Mm-hmm. SEC didn't let us in. So they didn't have much of a choice. So the Big 12 embraced us. So it's, it's hard for me to throw too much shade at the Big 12 because they did embrace West Virginia. But here's my fear, though. I do fear this. I'm not a huge – I like Brett Yormark, don't get me wrong, but he's a big city, big market guy. That's his background for the most part.
And that's why I wanted UConn a lot last summer. Wanted to add
Yes.
them, defending national champions, New York market there
Yep.
in Connecticut. And I think the president's kind of said, no, we don't want to bring
Yeah.
this school into the fold.
And I mean, you look at the teams he brought in: Arizona State and Arizona, because what that do give him the Phoenix market.
Phoenix market.
They brought in, Utah, which that's just a quality program. But but then now they have the Salt Lake market with Utah and BYU. They got the Denver market with Colorado. I mean, uh, it's all about now, and maybe the TV's driving that bus too. I don't know, but it makes me concerned about West Virginia's future, not just because of the Big 12 and their strategy, but just overall. I mean, almost every interview I hear, they talk about big markets, big markets. West Virginia has so many things working against it that it can't control, like the size of the population in West Virginia,
Yep.
the demographics of West. It's an aging population. The state continues to lose population. Not a ton of advertising dollars to be had in West Virginia. All those things works against schools, whether people want to talk about it or not. There's a lot more than how good you do on the field that come into these conversations. And unfortunately, the market size, demographics, all of that plays a role. And all of that works against even their academic model, which I admire because they're doing what they're supposed to do in educating Appalachians. And they have to do it at a low rate, which means you have a lower graduation rate, unfortunately. But that hurts them. I mean, I think that's what kept them out in large part out of the ACC, to be honest.
Yes.
So they can't change that. They're a land grant school, and they have that in their, I think that's part of their mission statement, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
So they can't, or at least their vision statement. So they can't, I don't know, man. I'm worried going forward that West Virginia's going to end up getting, if they go to some sort of a super conference or Power 2, whatever, I'm really worried that West Virginia doesn't make the cut, man.
Well,
Are you?
I see two ways forward, and some Mountaineer fans aren't necessarily going to like this, but I talk about, I feel like enough, is either that ESPN, because if you look at the data on ESPN games versus Fox games, West Virginia really rates well. Either it's just because of the opponent they're playing, or just, I don't know, Fox being, especially ESPN and ESPN2 being more accessible than, say, some of the other Fox channels.
Mm-hmm.
West Virginia rates really well. I go back to that 2022 year, that 5-7, but man, the Backyard Brawl did extremely well. The Virginia Tech Thursday night game did extremely well.
Yep.
And of all the other conferences out there, SEC fans remember the days when Pat White and Steve Slayton were running over Auburn and Mississippi State and beat Georgia in the Sugar Bowl. So there's this quiet, I feel like, unspoken, and Clemson, I know that's a ACC school, but it's in SEC country there in South Carolina. Right. There's this quiet respect, I feel like, between the SEC and a program like West Virginia. So there are some programs that I think are, if there's a next evolution of conference realignment, that are some programs on the fringe. I'm thinking like a North Carolina. I'm thinking like a Virginia Tech. I'm thinking a West Virginia, that make geographical sense, and you can make some, rivalries out of that will rate well. A Tennessee, a Kentucky, West Virginia would kind of work well with. Or the other model, if the SEC potentially passes, doesn't want to expand, Greg Sankey's played that very close to the vest and saying, we're not going to talk about, we're very happy with adding Oklahoma and Texas and staying at 16. Or if the ACC, because of Florida State and Clemson wanting to try and break loose, if the SEC will take them or something like that, and say a North Carolina and or Miami or Georgia Tech, go to the SEC and leaves the ACC ripe for the taking, just like the Big 12 did with the Pac-12 and then those G4 programs. G5 programs, then maybe a Louisville, maybe a Virginia Tech, maybe a Pitt, West Virginia, or the Big 12 can look at that and then kind of go to like a pods, divisions kinds of systems. Right. So you're not sending out a West Virginia to a Tempe, Arizona, or a Provo, Utah, at least on the regular, and kind of come up with that kind of mixed schedule. Agreed. But at the end of the day, is that kind of Big 12 conference perceived in the same light then as that I feel like would be the official break then of the SEC being and Big Ten being the two, AFC, NFC. So what I'm also really watching for is what happens with the college football playoff. I think that is a huge determining factor of what then moves forward as we look ahead toward that 2030, 2031 doomsday, if you want to call it. So that's where I actually, if we want to get into this topic, listening to that Three Guys Before the Game podcast, listening to Ren Becker talking about where his head was in talks about that college football playoff. Is it a 4-4-2-2-1 or a 5 versus 11? And everything that I've kind of read and thought about with this is I get where they're going with it. That over the last 10 years or so, the Big 12 would have averaged 2.2 teams. So just to lock them into only 2 potentially automatic qualifying bids, you might be selling yourself short. But my goodness, just the way that everything works in favor of the SEC and the Big Ten these days, you can't tell me in a 5-11 kind of model that the strength of schedule propaganda that all the fans and the media work in tandem won't slant toward those 2 conferences.
It absolutely will.
I don't know what's the, if you're casting a vote for that, I don't know what's the right model of, conceding essentially to the SEC and Big Ten and giving them 4 each automatic qualifying spots. Because they're going to get those final 3 at-larges too, or a Notre Dame who's basically a glorified Big Ten team at this point in time. So I don't know. It is just we've been in such a wait-and-see mode, I feel like, as a West Virginia fan for, I think about 7 years now. And it's just very tenuous ground in which we stand.
Yeah, agree. Well said. And I find myself going back and forth with the college football play. I started off really staunch that the 5-11 was the right way to go because I couldn't get past, as a guy who played sports myself in high school and have been a lifelong sports fan, I could not get, have even done some coaching. I couldn't get past the competition piece and earning it on the field. Best teams get the spot, yada, yada. So the 5-11 model made more sense to me. But then the more I thought about it, the more I hear about the propaganda push by the SEC, the more I looked at the data, I'm going, Big 12 is going to get screwed every year, man.
Yes.
But here's the other argument, which I totally understand too, is if you concede and give them an automatic 4 spots every year, you're codifying basically that, hey, we're only half the conference, at least half the conference. And what that can do is come next negotiation or negotiate anything else with those 2 leagues, they're going to say, but look, you just admitted that we're better than you, so why would you put, you know what I'm saying? It's almost like you're setting yourself up for a further breakaway, maybe even a break where they completely break away from you in the future. And I think that's why, Brett Yormark and Jim Phillips and others are going to use it's just better for college football. That's the argument they're going to use. But I think in the back of their mind, they know that if we concede this, they're going to expect us to concede more in the future. But here's where they went wrong, Carson. They should have never conceded that authority that they conceded when they gave the Big Ten and SEC the power to determine the format going. Why did they do? They should have tried to call the bluff.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
Yeah. Oh man, it all goes back to Texas and Oklahoma, really, sinking the ship. It seemed like in 2021 and trying to load all of the weight to get a new TV deal for the SEC with ESPN. And then the Pac-12 falls apart at the same time, USC, UCLA, then getting Oregon and Washington, which you can make the argument definitely better than UCLA. Not from a market standpoint, but just what you're getting out of athletic teams.
Right.
So at those same times, that was really the watershed moment, I feel like, of Division I college sports right there. So now they have all the cards. They're wielding their power, and they're holding that, guillotine over the head of these, especially the G6, but then, the Big 10 or Big 12 and ACC as well, to say we can form this kind of breakaway. So, but if that happens, even if that happens, there is not a world in which we live in which a Vanderbilt and a Rutgers are still as perceived better than a Clemson, a West Virginia, Oklahoma State, Miami, etc. So there has to be a change for the SEC and the Big Ten, try and get to equal footing on number of teams. And then what's that perfect number? Is it 40, like Nick Saban said, or is it somewhere in the ballpark of, 50 to 60, which I feel like should happen. And then is West Virginia a part of that?
I think it all depends on how does the Big Ten. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
No, it's okay.
I didn't. I think it depends because there are rumors floating around now that the Big Ten may be exploring an unequal revenue sharing model going forward.
I listened to your show on that, and that was a really well done show, Couz. I got to give you some credit on that one. That's why, why not just cut them loose and then try and realign?
Well, and that's what I'm thinking is that might be if that's true, because it was only one AD who made that comment.
Yeah.
If that's true and they do end up going down that road, the SEC is going to do it too, right? So what that means is that to me is if that happens, if we start seeing that in those two conferences, then what we're going to eventually see, in my opinion, is you're going to see the top brands in those two leagues start going off and doing their, and then that's when we'll see the true breakaway. You'll have the Ohio States, the Texases, the Alabamas, the Georgias, the Florida, maybe Florida State and Clemson might be included in that mix. I don't know, but you'll see those teams, Ohio State, Michigan, obviously, break off, do their own thing. And then you'll have all the other schools who I guess at that point would be called a tier 2, like the West Virginias, the Virginia Techs, basically all the Big 12 and most of the ACC, and then the bottom half of the SEC and Big 10 all doing their own thing.
And maybe some of those Big 10 schools that are getting that lesser cut, and they just say, hey, we can maybe either make more money, cut down on less expenses, because if you're a Piscataway, New Jersey, Rutgers fan, you're not going all the way to Seattle, Washington to watch Washington and Rutgers. And then maybe we get to more of a regionally based conferences again, which as a West Virginia fan, this to my point about the Big 12, attendance, everything like that is West Virginia will always, always, always do better when it perform, and then the fans show up, build that brand identity, etc. When it's playing its traditional geographic rivals like Pitt, like Maryland, like Louisville, like Virginia Tech, etc. Even if it's in, say, a lesser division.
Yeah, and that's fair. That's fair. Hey, do me a favor. Go check out my good friends over at Appalachia Digital. If you need a brand new website for your small business, or if you're just looking to get found easier on Google, go check out appalachiadigital.com/Couz. These are the fine folks who designed my brand new website over at wvsportschat.com. They did a fantastic job. I love their work. I think you will too. So go check them out. appalachiadigital.com/Couz. Let them know Couz sent you. Now let's get back to the show. All right, let's switch gears a minute and talk about Rich Rod, man. What are your thoughts on the return of Rich Rod? I kind of see this as Ren Becker looking at this as we've got to do something to spark interest. Number one, we got to sell tickets. We got to start winning again because of what we just talked about, the future of college sports. This is a crucial, crucial time. This might be the most important football coaching hire in West Virginia history.
Well, you're talking to one of the more controversial guys talking about West Virginia sports on YouTube and myself back December, because that I did not receive that news well. That just went back in headspace of December 2nd, 2007, and how much that hurt me, and I know hurt a lot of Mountaineer fans when he,
it hurt me too. Yeah,
I don't forget that day. And how the rest of that next week ended up playing out. And where I guess I will ultimately say, I think he ingratiated himself very, very well back to the fans. Obviously, having Pat McAfee's sign of approval, that entire show, all of that went extremely well. And I'm a forgiving guy. Yeah. So I am totally willing to give him at this point in time this second chance to go out there and make things right, as he said at that point in time. And I got to give him and this entire staff so much credit. They have been working their tails off for 6 straight months. 74 newcomers to this fall 25 roster. They've already had 22 commits for the 26 roster. He is completely purging out the trust the climb movement and bringing back, trying to reestablish the hard edge mentality, earned success model. And I think actually perfect timing for it, given what the transfer portal window was there to purge some of the players, a lot of them that he didn't think were cut out for what he was looking for, didn't fit it, and to try and siphon them out to bring in the players that he and his, I thought hearing what he said, I forget on which show it was, that he had all of the staff recruit the entire transfer or evaluate the entire transfer portal. That's thousands of different players. You know how many hours that is watching huddle tape and stuff like that, or other game day tape. So they are trying to replace those play. I would love to still have Josiah Trotter on this year's roster.
Absolutely.
I would love to have Tomas Remack. I would love to still have Hudson Clement and CJ Donaldson.
Traylon Ray.
But West Virginia's found some nice pieces in those spots. And that is where, if you believe in that hard edge movement, and we are going to be more physical than every opponent that we play, I'm willing to buy into that. And I can kind of, hear that all through spring practice. And it might be rough around the edges, in August and then into September's games. It's all going to come down to the backyard brawl. That's where we're really going to tell whether there's, some sort of a corner being turned, and how good can this team be? Because right now, I don't know what to think with all of these newcomers at all of these different positions.
Yeah, it's impossible to know. And that's why so many outside prognosticators are picking West Virginia to finish so low in the league, because of all the unknowns. Anytime you have that many unknowns, if I'm doing a prediction and I see a team's got 50 transfers, I'm not going to pick them to finish high in the league, because it goes outside the norm. But the problem is, though, this is kind of new. Mm-hmm. And there's only been really 2 or 3 recent examples of guys doing that. You've got the Dion example, which didn't work well in year 1. Now it worked okay in year 2, but he had
transcendent players.
Yes. And Shador's an NFL talent too. Shador had probably second round NFL talent, if not first round talent. It was what was up here that caused him to drop. You got Travis Hunter, who is a transcendent player, right? He's not going to. So how will he do moving forward without those guys? That's a huge question. Mm-hmm. And then you've the other example, Kurt Cignetti at Indiana. Now he didn't bring in quite as many as Rich Rod, though. He had like 30-ish. Rich Rod's got 50. So still a big difference. But Cignetti had a high number of of group of 5 level players too, like Rich Rod does. So I think there are some similarities there. Yep. But I just think it comes down to Rich Rod's mentality, man. He embodies what it means, the hard work, chip on your shoulder, punching above your weight class, going that extra mile, outworking everybody. And then his offensive philosophy is so different than most. He's an offensive genius, pretty much. Yeah. Those are the things to me that are going to could be the game changers. It's not going to be because they go out and get 5-star guys, because West Virginia's never going to get a bunch of 5-star guys. They're going to have to get the guys who are better than people think, maybe even guys who need to play different positions, and guys who are just willing to outwork you. But the high risk, high reward thing, why I've got that on the screen as a banner, is because I think this is either going to blow up in Ren Becker and West Virginia's face, bringing Rich Rod back, because it's a huge risk. Because if it doesn't work out, I think fans are going to be slower or quicker to bail on Rich Rod than they would of somebody like Neil Brown, who was the nice guy, right? Fans did not want to bail on Neil Brown because he was such a nice guy and he was doing everything else right. You bring back this guy who already left you high and dry once, and if he comes back and you're already on somebody like you who was already on the fence about the move anyway, and he don't win, are you going to be on the bandwagon very long if he doesn't win?
Well, it's this logo that I'm loyal to first and foremost. It's not to one sole player. I totally agree with everything you just said, by the way, about the differences in, what Colorado did to Indiana did. And then there's some examples, like let's take our most hated rival, Pitt, 3-9. And then they come in this past year. Yeah, they get Eli Holstein, which was a complete game changer for them. But we didn't know what to make of that team with so much roster change too. But they didn't do it so much. They just made a new offensive coordinator hire, got a running back from Western Carolina, stuff like that. So if you identify up and coming caliber guys, and I think Rodriguez has done so in some of his other coaching position hires, namely Zach Alley, I think that that's what's going to make a huge difference for this entire team. I mean, West Virginia was undercoached in quantity last year. Remember, it was Shadon Brown coaching both the safeties and the cornerbacks. Jordan Leslie kind of left out on an island. Is he going to coach from the box? Is he going to coach out onto the field? And we know, the difference in philosophies if you've listened to the interviews between Allie and Leslie. So that was just, should have either cut bait with him or he needed to change completely from 2023 to 2024 in his philosophy, being more blitz heavy, stuff like that. Yeah. But then going back to Rodriguez, yes, I think there was at the time of the hire, very like polarizing moment in the fans again, I've seen some WVU Facebook is sometimes a dark place to go to.
It is. Yes.
With comments that are completely off the wall, but there were a lot of fans like myself who were still not very happy with that. Mm-hmm. But again, that's all going to change if he starts to win. It's starting it off with September 13th, and then can get this. Like I thought it was very bold when he said earlier this spring that, hey, if West Virginia is not in contention for a Big 12 conference championship, which West Virginia has only in the month of November, which how many times has West Virginia done that in the last 13 years in the Big 12?
Not very many.
Few times. Oh my goodness. You never heard that kind of bold declaration out of Neil Brown, or when he did, it was unfulfilled promises. Jarrett Deggy is our most improved player from 2020 to 2021, or finally, thankfully he did that in 2023. But I mean, some things broke West Virginia's way really well in 2023 with the schedule. And then, just some things, a hurricane hitting during the Texas Tech game that you pull out on the very last play when your starting quarterback, Garrett Green, gets hurt. So just some things broke. But now the same thing's going to have to happen for Rodriguez, is he's got to identify his best 22. Best on offense, best on defense, and fill that out with the depth chart. And thankfully, West Virginia is not starting off this season with a Power 5 opponent. They're going to get to kind of have a little bit of a warm-up game. Ohio had a pretty good season last year, but lost their head coach. Some depth was depleted. So I feel like in both of those games, you're going to feel pretty confident. And Vegas is going to have them favored in those contests. So then once it's finally backyard brawl time, that we're going to get to know what they're made of. And right now, I don't think that there was such a drop off in talent because of what we saw last year out of West Virginia football, just like sloppy play, and just some injuries in certain positions, or guys just kind of dogging it. So if that attitude mentality can flip, and that's what Rodriguez has said, if you don't compete, you won't play. And they can have some depth at different positions to change those guys out as necessarily needed to schematically. And I think that's going to yield positive results.
Dogging it will not be allowed under Rich Rodriguez. I can almost guarantee you that.
Right.
And we did see it occasionally under the Neil Brown regime. So
yes,
I'm not going to name names, but I did witness it a few times, and and those players didn't get benched. They were brought right back in there the next play in a lot of cases. Mm-hmm. Or they might have taken them out and put them back in. And of course, I know the argument would be, well, we didn't have enough depth. Well, whose fault is that?
Exactly. and I also just think that the media is not understanding, or underrating Nico Mariel as a quarterback.
You think they are there or not?
They are underrating him. So okay. I mean, I
think the verdict's still out, but I do agree to a point.
There's 7 really good quarterbacks out there, and I don't need to necessarily list them. But then I think right around, 7 or 8 to where he's being pegged like 15th or 16th, I think he can compete with any of those other different quarterbacks. Now, does he fit Rodriguez's system entirely? He's not Pat White. That's not the kind of style of play that he's going to fit the mold. But neither was Jacksonville State starting quarterback last year. And you saw the numbers that he put up. You heard
1,000 yards rushing.
Yep. You heard Rodriguez even say that, like, man, we didn't think he could run, say, a 4.6 in practice or something, get him on the field on game time, and he makes plays. And every single time I've watched Nico Mariel play, he's made plays. Going back to 2022 against Oklahoma State.
Even when he wasn't playing his best game from a from passing the ball, he would make plays with his legs.
Exactly. He went and he wins. He wins
Winner.
ultimately at the end of the day. He's done so even going back to his high
Mm-hmm.
school days. I didn't watch the YouTube video to get the exact numbers of. I'm sure you've seen that video of his high school team's comeback. How many points down and like what was it like
It was
2
like
minutes?
17 points or something in a minute and a half or something crazy. Yeah.
Right. He was
whatever it was. And again, I don't remember. I'm going off memory, but yeah.
So I just think that in game management of quarterbacks, was good and bad, more so bad than good during the Neil Brown era. And I think there were some ripe opportunities for Marchiol to get more playing experience to the point where he's a fourth year quarterback. And you have fans like, many out there who are saying, they don't know necessarily what they have in him. But I mean, man, he's probably, a 21, 22-year-old kid. He's been developing in West Virginia's system now for his fourth season. He's ready to rock and roll. And in a wide receiver position, I like what West Virginia's brought in Cam Vaughn as a pass catcher. I don't think we'll see a huge drop off from Hudson Clement to him. At the second and third strings, I'm still very curious to see. But man, how many wide receiver transfers has West Virginia received? And now you've built a really good running back stable behind him that they're still going to run the ball a tremendous amount, and he will run you over. So give him the opportunity, and let's see what he can do. And then I like what I've seen, especially at 2023 tape of Texas A&M against LSU and what Jalen Henderson was able to do against a Jaden Daniels-led LSU team. So it's not like you're going to oh man, who's that quarterback in 2017 when Will Grier broke his finger against
Texas? It was Jack Allison, maybe.
It'll come to me. Chris Chugginoff. It's not like you're going to Chris Chugginoff as your backup and you're expecting your defense to score points for you on turnovers for touchdowns. So I like where they're at quarterback room. It's this offensive line, man, that I'm just like.
They had such confidence in him, they went to a Wildcat offense.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wasn't that the year they went to the Wildcat in the bowl game?
Yeah, it was like Kennedy McCoy or something was running the Wildcat for him. It's wild.
That poor quarterback, they're not even giving him a chance.
Yeah. So I've been a Nico guy since his signing day. I really can't wait to see what he does when he's presented that starting opportunity.
I'm definitely rooting for Nico because I love his loyalty to the program. He could have left multiple times. He didn't, especially during the coaching change.
Yep.
And I'm rooting for him. I do want him to win the job, but at the end of the day, I'm like you. I cheer for the logo more than the player. So if Jalen Henderson's the guy, Rich Rod has a great track record of coaching and evaluating and developing quarterbacks. I'm going to trust his judgment on it. And I think either guy can win, to be honest with you. I like them both.
So I'm ready for fall camp.
I'm just ready for August 30th, man. I can't wait. This might be the first time I've ever been excited for an FCS team to come to Morgantown, man.
Yeah. And Robert Morris was better years prior. They've gone through some struggles, but reading my Lindy's preview magazine, I think they're picked third in their conference already to start out the season. So I think behind Duquesne, and we know how West Virginia did against Duquesne just a couple of seasons ago. So I think you'll see some high flying offense, and that'll make everybody happy there on
Agreed.
Season opener.
Well, listen, Carson, man, I really appreciate you coming on the show. Let everybody know one more time where to find you and your work.
Sure. So on YouTube at Fox on West Virginia Mountaineer Sports, and if you want to follow me on Twitter X at Carson_Fox27, and I tell everybody every week, tell your friends, tell your family, tell your dog. I do this each and every week and have a lot of fun doing it.
Yeah,
so
awesome. Yep. Everybody go check out his channel, please. Subscribe to it. Give him a thumbs up on the videos. Follow him on X. Do all that good stuff. So yeah, go check out his work. Find me on X as well if you want to find me on X at Couz206. That's COUZ206 for those listening. Carson's handle is at Carson_Fox27. Go check him out. Thank you all for tuning into the show. Till next time, Q Country Roads.